was about 14, I used to say I want to be an embryologist, which was very controversial. And perhaps if I'd stuck with that, I'd now be doing stem cell research and I'd be at the forefront of biology research. But yeah, that's what I wanted to do when I was about 14. But by the time I was 16, I really wanted to work in space science and astronomy, yeah, and be an astronaut probably. I think probably first that I thought, oh, that could be a job, you know, I didn't know what it meant, but that I loved science. About 8 or 9, very, very young. But I think all the way through secondary school, I knew that I would do something connected with the scientific area, yeah, definitely. I think when I was about 16, I really had the idea that I wanted to be an astronaut or a space scientist, a rocket scientist of some kind. That was around the time when Helen Fraser was selected to be the astronaut that was funded by UK industry. And I was really frustrated that I was just, you know, 6 years too young to even start applying. And then, of course, I realised that the ambition of being an astronaut in those days, being British, was almost impossible unless you became American or became Russian. And so I thought, well, maybe I should work in something connected to space. But as I went sort of through my school and then university, I kept swaying in different directions, and it was only actually after my PhD, so it's many years later again, like nearly 10 years later, that I really moved back into astronomy. So it was quite a waving journey. It wasn't just a straight career plan or path in any way. At the times when I've thought maybe the academic route wasn't for me or doing scientific research, you know, a lot of friends have come to me, one friend in particular that I'm thinking of, and just said, look, Helen, science defines you. You can't not be a scientist. But along the way, teachers who encouraged me at the beginning at school level, definitely when I was at university, 2 or 3 lecturers that I can really remember that advised me well and pointed me in the right direction. And then as I've gone on, you know, there's still a pyramid to getting into an academic career. There's still a pyramid that I've still got to get through to become a professor. But all the time you've got people around you who are sort of advising you and informally mentoring you. So lots of people who, you know, just give you advice and help you along the way, different people at different times. I think that's important. I loved the idea of exploring and adventuring and going beyond, you know, I love that idea. But I also love to do what I'm good at. Actually, I think we all quite like to do what we're good at. And I'm really good at chemistry. And so I didn't really want to be a pharmaceutical chemist. I wanted to use what we call physical chemistry and understand the world around, and use chemical physics and understand the world around. And it just so happened that I've actually come through my career at a time where that area of astronomy is really expanding. And so in a way, by hook or by crook, I've kind of ended up combining the things I'm really good at that actually motivate me, atomic and molecular physics with astronomy, and applying that in fields of space science and understanding stars and planets and life in the universe, really. That's what I've done. Definitely I was aware that studying science could lead to a career in space. I can recall at school we were made to do a sort of a career plan. We had to answer lots of questions on a computer, and it was really exciting because we got to use a computer, and in the 80s that was a big deal still. And then what got kicked out at the other end was all these suggestions of the types of jobs you could have. And, you know, it brought up things like air traffic controller and all sorts of different things. And I think it just, every job it gave me, not that they were any jobs that I really wanted to do, but they were all very scientific. So I knew that science sort of led along that path. I was aware of that somehow, yes. After I did my O-levels and GCSEs, you know, it's a choice of choosing A-levels. And initially, actually, I chose everything I was really good at. So I chose French, geography, maths and chemistry. And then everyone was like, what are you going to do with that? And I suppose I could have become a volcanologist or a geologist, or I was quite a long way by then from my idea of being an embryologist, I think, and quite a long way from my interest in space. But when I went to Marconi's and had my summer job, they said to me, why are you doing these? Why don't you do, you know, a really hardcore, you know, science A-levels? So actually the first thing I did, and they were a big influence, I did double maths, chemistry, physics at A-level. Like, yeah, I know, shocking. And I loved it. Actually, I found I was quite good at it. Although there were girls at school who were much better than me at physics and maths. But when I got to university, I actually discovered I was pretty good at these things too. You know, I'd been in a school with quite a lot of smart people, but actually when I got in the real world, I was still pretty smart. And then actually I still wasn't convinced that necessarily I was really good at physics. So I did physics and chemistry at university. And actually it turns out I was better at physics than chemistry, although chemistry was quite easy. I had to put a bit more effort into physics, which might also be a factor. But even at the end of university, I applied on what was called the milk round in those days. So I applied to Mars. They gave me a job offer, so a big Mars company. I also applied for PhD places, and in the end I chose the PhD place. And at the end of PhD I applied to go and work at MPL. They gave me a job offer. I turned it down and I went into a postdoc on an academic path. And then I did a few years of academic work and I thought maybe I won't get a permanent job, maybe I won't get an academic position. So I applied in publishing and to management consultancy and into industry, and then decided to sort of stick with it and stay in academia. So, you know, I'm not at the end of my career. I've got a lot of years probably to go, probably another 30 to go. I can't promise that I'll be an academic forever, but I think it's interesting because you have all those choices and different ways to go. And my personal feeling is I've ended up where I am because I've made a conscious decision every time. I haven't just tried to follow the path blindly, and I think you have to do that. A few years ago, I was nominated. The Wired magazine had what they call a smart list, and they bring it out every 2 years, and it's 50 people they think might be movers and shakers in their field, and somebody who's very senior in the field nominated me in the fields of astrochemistry and astrobiology as a mover and shaker of the future. And there was my name in print and all these people reading Wired magazines and my friends phoning me up and saying, did you see? And that's quite exciting. And I mean, all my friends and family, and especially my son, love it when I'm on TV because they think it's so cool that somebody they know is there giving an expert opinion. Gradually, when you do it more and more, you get a bit more blasé about it, but it is quite cool still. And I suppose most recently I had a really nice accolade, which is quite fun. Next year is the 100th anniversary of women being admitted as fellows to the Royal Astronomical Society. And 20 women from across the UK, across the fellowship, have been selected for a special portrait display showing the sort of influential fellows of the current era. And I was selected as one of those 20, which was pretty humbling actually, and asked if I'd be willing, and I said yes I will, and it's pretty nice. And it always shocks me when some younger, especially females in the field, come to me and say, oh, you're such a role model to me, can I talk to you, can I have your advice? Because I still see myself as learning and going through my career and learning and asking people for help, and I don't necessarily think of myself as someone who has experience yet to give to other people, and sometimes you forget that you do. And I think that those things, when people say well done or would like your advice, they're the biggest accolades actually. A PhD is always a bit of a rite of passage. PhDs can be really hard work, they can be quite lonely and difficult, and believe me, there were 2 or 3 times during my PhD where I phoned my parents and said, I think you should come and pick me up, I'm gonna quit. Pardon me. And then I remember my mum once saying to me, well, what are you going to do if you quit? I'll take you home, but what are you going to do? And then I said, well, I really want to do a PhD, and well, in that case, then you need to stick with it. And she was very good at being rational and making me realise you've got to make changes, but you've got to do them in a positive way. I think the other time that's really hard is when you're in a career progression into academia, you postdoc for a really long time. So your friends are starting to get married and have families, or have got families, they're settled down, they've bought their houses, they're stable, and you're still doing 2 years in this country and 2 years in that country in short-term contracts. And the competition, you know, you can hundreds of people applying for 1 or 2 jobs. The competition is immense, and you wonder if you're ever going to make it. And you've got people around you telling you you're going to be successful, but sometimes not being sure. And I think there's a lot of disappointment in academia because success rates of grants are like 5 or 10%, which means that sometimes you write a grant and put all this effort in and think you've got a wonderful idea, and then you don't get the money. And usually it's because you haven't actually communicated the idea very well on a piece of paper. It's not really a bad idea, and it's learning that process of understanding those knockbacks. They are hard, and I think you're naive. I think some people are very thick-skinned, but I think you just have to take them on the chin and learn from them and take that as a positive experience for the next step.